Hello, guys. My name is Adam Hess, and welcome to the Hess Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Hess, and you're watching this live on twitch.tv/JaguarWarrior100, and then later you'll be watching this on the YouTube channel titled Hess Sports. Today's episode, and I'm trying a different method today because of low frame rate, because I was seeing some frame drops last episode, and so I'm testing the streaming capabilities. So I decided not to. Multi-stream. But today's episode, I will be talking about the NFL exclusively today. If I feel like talking about other sports, we'll see. But for now, I wanted to talk about the NFL and and just kind of talk about it as a whole this year, and kind of review each team. Hold on, okay, just trying to keep my brain trying to. I'll be pausing a little bit every so often to let my computer catch up. Anyway, so yeah, that'll be it. That'll be what we're doing today, and we'll be starting with the AFC East, and then later we'll be talking about the Seattle Seahawks, because there was an interesting tweet by one of the players about where the offense went wrong, and I have my theories to it. And we'll get into that later. But for now, we will now start. The first, as I said before, we're going to start with the AFC East. The AFC East has the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, and the New England Patriots and the New York Jets in it. This year's the Bills won the AFC East division this year, going 13-3. They went 10-6 last year, which is an improvement. The Dolphins were 10-6 this year, improving from 5-11 last year. The New England Patriots finished third in the division, going 7-9 after going 12-4 the previous year. There's reasons to that, and then the New York Jets go from 7-9 last year to 2-14 this year, and I think, and the first team we'll talk about is the division winners, the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills this year went 13-3 this year, and made it all the way to the AFC Championship. They made some key additions in the offseason, and in the trade market they boosted the defense by adding Mario Addison at defensive end, Josh Norman at cornerback, and AJ Klein at linebacker. And on offense, they traded for Stephon Diggs, if I remember correctly. I think that was a trade to improve the receiving core. Overall, I thought they played pretty well this season. They got some key wins against the Seattle Seahawks. They beat the Patriots, obviously, which is an important thing, especially given the fact that the Buffalo Bills haven't really been very successful against the Patriots for a while. You know, as I said before in the last video, I can't remember if I said that already, but they only beat the the Bills only beat the Patriots like at least 3 times since or 6 times since Bill Belichick took over, and that's pretty significant. And given the fact that the New England Patriots were pretty much the de facto NFC or the AFC East division champions every year, it's pretty significant. I thought they played pretty well. Josh Allen obviously took a huge leap forward this year with his mechanics. He was 396 completions out of 572 attempts, which is which is a 69.2% completion percentage. He threw for 500. He threw for 4,544 yards, 37 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. That's a huge improvement from last year. Last year he only completed 58.8% of his passes, only threw 20 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. So he's trending in the right direction. I think the additions this year were phenomenal. I still think they're a couple pieces away on the defensive side of the ball and at tailback from truly being a Super Bowl contender. They were on the verge this year, but the Bills should look for a way to boost their secondary, especially if the Kansas City Chiefs are the team they are going to have to beat to reach the Super Bowl. The one thing I think Josh Allen needs to worry about and the Bills need to look out for is becoming too dependent on Stephon Diggs. Yes, he is a great receiver for them. He's a good addition, but if teams find a way to neutralize him and Josh Allen is too reliant on him, it could work against his development. The credit to Patrick Mahomes on the Kansas City Chiefs for not falling into the I got to throw to Tyreek Hill every play because sometimes they can take him away and that's a weapon for him because he's credit to Mahomes for spreading the ball around. He's good about that. If they only goes to Hill when it's necessary. Like Hill still gets his touches, gets his targets and whatnot, but it's safer. I'm still waiting to see how Isaiah Hodgins turns out for them because he's the receiver that they drafted out of Oregon State in the 6th round. I think when he gets healthy, I don't know when he got injured or whatnot, but I think when Isaiah Hodgins gets healthy, I think he could become a pretty good target to pair with Stephon Diggs and whatnot. When he was at Oregon State, he was really good with the double move. Those were his go-to routes practically. Like the double move, and it was pretty hard to beat. And I think the one of the other areas I think the Bills should try and look for is a feature back for Josh Allen. The team right now as it's constructed is more of a running by committee, like a back by committee kind of team, and it's good and all, but like sometimes you need but it's really nice to have like a feature back that you can rely upon because if you do a running back by committee and like you have one running back who's for the power back, like the one you use for the power back and then one you use for more of a speed, that's more of your speedy guy, and then you have the balanced guy. I think you need a more of a balanced guy, or one back, one or two backs. I think three if they're good enough. But sometimes in a running back by committee, when one of those players gets injured, it's kind of hard to fill in the hole there because you lose the skill that he's on the team for, and you don't really have a back on the team that's suited for all aspects. It could be beneficial for the Bills to try and pursue a running back like Ezekiel Elliott, who I know hasn't looked great with Dallas over the last few years, but I think that's more of the scheme. I think that's decision is more of when the Dallas Cowboys decide to run it, as opposed to actually working it into the scheme, because because Shannon Sharp says it perfectly, and this is true with the running game. The running game is not always about and this is one thing I get irritated with Skip about, is that the running game does not always, like, the running back is not always going to break a big gain. Sometimes some backs, sometimes you'll get a 5 yard gain, sometimes it'll go back 1 yard, and and then and throughout the game, you get these little plays, and sometimes you get long runs, but you got to stick with the run. And I think that's the thing that Skip. I think that's the thing that Shannon Sharp has been trying to explain to Skip. Yes, Dak Prescott has improved over the years, but it still pays dividends to have a running game. And I know that I know this is a passing league now, there's still but good things can still happen when you run the ball. Just look at teams like the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns, who had a phenomenal running game this year. Featuring Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I think I think if I think I don't think any offense is good enough to just pass it every play. And you're like, well, we got to feed. He's our made man. He's our quarterback, so we got to pass it. But and so, or bringing in a running back like Devontae Freeman or even Todd Gurley. I'm sure you could find one of those backs, and I think those backs would pay dividends. It'd be kind of like, when you had LaShawn McCoy for your team. He was more of a feature back, I would say, it for Philadelphia and and then for the Bills. Um, the next team. Do I think this was a fluke this year for the Bills? I don't think so. Um, will they be 30-3 next year? Who knows? Because your wins and losses fluctuate season to season. Um, I still think Josh Allen's still improving. I think sometimes this year they had a good. They played well this year. They did. They were red hot going into the playoffs. But I think there were some games where their defense didn't quite live up, and and it took them a while to score or stay with the lead. And that's what ultimately happened with the Chiefs. And Chiefs are really good, by the way. And you have to when you play a team like the Chiefs, as I said before, and you have to stay with them. You can't let them score, and you can't not score against the Chiefs and expect to beat them, because they're too good for that. The next team in the division was the Miami Dolphins. They went 10-6 this year. I don't know if it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason. Should they get rid of Tua? I'm one who thinks not, because if you give up on Tua, you basically waste a draft pick. Um, yes, the Chargers took Herbert before you could, I think, or I believe. But I think, but I think, but I think the thing with Tua that I think people thought they were going to get was they were going to see Patrick Mahomes level, kind of production, and I would say that's more rare than it is. I would say that kind of production is rare right off the bat. Some quarterbacks take time to mold into who they'll eventually become. That was true for Brett Favre. For a little bit. You know, there's a reason he got traded from Atlanta to Green Bay, because they didn't believe in him. And what happens if Tua goes to Houston and you trade for Deshaun Watson, and Tua ends up being having a better career in Houston than Deshaun does with Miami? You'd kind of feel, as a Dolphins fan, I would feel kind of stupid for you know, doing that, because I would, because I've experienced that before, like as I said in last episode, I was talking about how the Oregon State Beavers went with a different, you know, could have gone with Marcus McMaryion, the quarterback who won the who won us who was the starter for the Civil War that one year, and he was the better option, I felt, and I was excited to see him. And they went with Luton, the transfer, and I understand I understand that you got to play him because he was a transfer, but at that point, I think McMaryion was the better choice over Luton just because of the fit. And I feel like if the Miami and I don't think the I don't think Tua's lack of production this year was 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 the one problem with the Dolphins this year. They're a team on the come up right now. I think the Dolphins this year could be the Bills, are kind of like the Bills, could be the Bills next year, because if you remember, because I remember when I was doing this podcast last year before I went off to college, before I moved to Corvallis to go to Oregon State, I said I was predicting that the Bills would be one of the sleeper teams to make the playoffs last year, because the previous year they would win games by a big margin, and then they would, and then they would lose, and they weren't. And I thought if they, I thought if they could play some better defense, they could potentially be a dark horse for the playoffs. And sure enough, they did. And then I thought they would be even better this year, and they were. And so I think I kind of see Tua as the Josh Allen for the Dolphins, practically, because Josh Allen didn't start off too well either. They were like he was a turnover machine, when he first got to Buffalo. He was a turnover machine, and he couldn't stop turning the ball over. And then, he and it's worked, and they credit to Buffalo for staying with him and trusting in the coaches, and they're paying, and it's paying dividends. Their patience is paying dividends, and I think that's what the Dolphins need to do. I think they should try and look. I think they should look to reshuffle the receiving core a little bit and try and get Tua some help. Maybe if you have a higher draft pick, maybe you could go into the draft and get a receiver. You know, try and get him a receiver, or because I don't think Devontae Parker can be. I don't think I don't think the receiving core is good enough to support Tua yet. You know, I saw a comment recently where they were talking about how when they were talking about the game with Tua, when Tua's first start, when he threw 94 yards, and one of the comments said, like, did you guys not see all the drops? Like, the receivers couldn't stop dropping passes, and that can happen too with a young team. Drop passes and whatnot, and learning how to, catch the ball in situations. And I think the receiving core needs some work there. Potentially a new running back is in order. The defense is pretty good still, but it still needs some work. So I think the Dolphins should stick with Tua, just based off the fact that that he is he is the quarterback that you drafted, and and I don't think it's the Josh Rosen situation for when the Cardinals took Josh Rosen in number one in a couple years ago. I don't think it's that situation here, but it could be. But because I think Tua Tagovailoa is a better quarterback than Josh Rosen, because Josh Rosen didn't win too much at UCLA. He had that one comeback versus Texas A&M, and they in that season they went they went 5-7 the rest of the way. So not too great, you know. And there were red flags all over him, just based off of focus and attitude towards, you know, like his production. And I think that's why the Cardinals ended up getting rid of him, because, you know, because you know, Kyler Murray was a better choice as well, you know. And the other thing too is that this was a weird year for the Dolphins, because they didn't start out too particularly well, because you remember they had Ryan Fitzpatrick on the team this year as well, you know. And the plan was to start him, you know, for the first few games, and let Tua Tagovailoa kind of get healthy, because Tua well, he was at Alabama his last year. He was kind of nursing an injury, you know, and he had some off-season surgeries. And you know, the plan was to let him sit and learn and watch Ryan Fitzpatrick play. And you know, they didn't start out too well. They went 3-3 before their bye. And they started out the season with a 2-game losing streak before winning, and so they were 1-2, and then they were 1-3, and then they ended. Then before their bye, they won 2 games in a row. And in one game, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick was knocked out with a concussion, I believe, or something, or Tua Tagovailoa, or it was time for Tua Tagovailoa to start, because I thought he was healthy enough. And it was kind of weird, because they started winning, but then there was still some questions, you know, because, you know, and it was kind of a question of like, should we go with the veteran if we're gonna make a playoff push? Should we go with the veteran, or should we stay with Tua Tagovailoa and see what he can do? So it's kind of a weird scenario there. I think the scenario this season for the Dolphins, I think this is what we would have seen if Tony Romo was healthy enough for the Cowboys back in 2016. If you know, if he was injured for the first few games and Dak Prescott played well, you know, or not so well, and Tony Romo was healthy enough, I think they would have gotten back to Tony Romo if he was if he would have gotten healthy enough, you know, in like early enough. And I think you would have seen this. I think you in Dallas, you would have seen that kind of situation play out, because, you know, and but it didn't happen the way for Dallas. But I think you kind of seeing what that situation would have played out in Miami. And I understand that, because, you know, if the playoffs were a possibility, I would probably go with the veteran. You know, if he was healthy, you know, the proven player, you know. But I like that they stuck with Tua, even though they did take him out because he wasn't playing too particularly well, and they put Ryan Fitzpatrick in. But credit to them for sticking with them when they could. So yeah, the next team is the New England Patriots. Obviously, this is the first year without Tom Brady, because he went to Tampa Bay. So there's a lot of reshuffling, and you also had a lot of opt-outs on the defensive side because of COVID. You also brought in Cam Newton on a 1-year deal. They went 7-9 this year. Is Cam Newton the right fit? It remains to be seen, because I think his best years are behind him. I would have thought they would have tried to, you know, it's good that they let Cam be Cam, but I feel like you know, but I think this year was kind of weird for the Patriots. Because of with the lack of with the lack of people on defense at their that were available this year because of COVID, and then they couldn't really do much. And credit to them, they went 7-9. That's not great, but but I would say given the circumstances, 7-9 was pretty good. Do I think they should move on from Cam? It remains to be seen. You know, there were certain games where Cam played really well and looked like he was going to win, like the first couple weeks, and then it kind of started to look like, and then he kind of started to show his age a little bit. The reason why the reason why he's no longer in Carolina, and it's unfortunate. I think the Patriots should try and rebuild though, because I think Julian Edelman's getting up there in age. I think they need to reshuffle the O line and get some receivers. I think N'Keal Harry so far has not panned out for them, but so I think you try to look to the draft to get a couple receivers, and maybe a running back. Um, could they make a move in the in the trade market for a quarterback? Who knows? Um, I was thinking they should bring back Jimmy Garoppolo. They'd be good and all, but those sometimes don't. But those don't normally work out. Like you trade away a guy and then you bring him back, especially a quarterback. That's kind of that's a big risk, you know. Because I would say that Kyle Shanahan is a better coordinator than Josh McDaniels, and if Jimmy Garoppolo struggled with Kyle Shanahan, you know, I don't know. Him. I don't see how he. I don't see why he would play any better with Josh McDaniels as his offensive coordinator. It'd be interesting to see though. Maybe you know that's all I had to say about them. Um, the next team is the New York Jets. They were terrible this year. Um, they. I don't think there's really much to talk about. They didn't play well at all this year. They did show some signs of life at the end of the season, to their detriment. They were in the they were in the race for Trevor Lawrence, and then they win 2 games in a row, and then they win 2 games, and now they're no longer, and they practically gave the number one draft pick to the New York Jets. Um, I think Sam Darnold is a bust. However, we'll see. We'll see because quarterbacks under Adam Gase have not been very successful. You look at Ryan Tannehill when Adam Gase was still the head coach in Miami. You look at Ryan Tannehill in Miami versus Tennessee. It was a different story. Ryan Tannehill now looks like a pretty good quarterback, and Sam Darnold, before Adam Gase got there, has Adam Gase been there the entire time Sam Darnold's been there? I can't remember, but but Sam Darnold doesn't look any better since he got there, and we'll see if they stick with him if they're thinking about playing Tannehill, maybe they stay with Sam Darnold one more year to see if it was Adam Gase all along, because given the Ryan Tannehill factor, and and I and it's a good thing Adam Gase did not. I'm glad that the Seahawks did not decide to hire Adam Gase, because I don't want him in my offense. I don't think he's a good I don't think he's a very good coordinator um, or coach. And so I think the Jets are in a good spot. Probably it remains to be seen because, you know, it'll be interesting to see. But the Jets were just bad this year. The next division we're going to talk about. The next division we're going to talk about is the let's see here. The next division we're going to talk about is the AFC West. The teams in that division are the Kansas City Chiefs, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Denver Broncos. The Kansas City Chiefs won the division, obviously, and then with a 14-2 record. The Raiders finished second with an 8-8 record. The Chargers finished with a 7-9 record, and then the Broncos finished with a 5-11 year. The Kansas City Chiefs are obviously really good. They're the best team in the NFL right now. There isn't really much to talk about. I like what they did this year, although there are times when they get caught, but I don't think there's really any problems with them. They're just really good, you know. I think they're going to be good for a long time. They're obviously in the Super Bowl for the second year in a row. This division is going to be pretty tough to win if you're either of the other three teams. The Raiders were pretty good this year. They were average though. You know, they got some key wins. You know, they in the early part of the season they looked like a potential playoff team because they beat. You know, they started off the year, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-3 to start the year off. You know, with one of those went like they started out the year beating the Carolina Panthers, the New Orleans Saints, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Those are some solid wins right there. And you know, I think where it started to fall apart, and I think that and you think in playoffs because the Raiders looked pretty good and Derek Carr was starting to play well again, but I still think the Raiders are still a couple years away, or still a year away. This seems to be a slow build for John Gruden. Like if you notice the trajectory, it's been steadily increasing. I think last year the first year under John Gruden they went 5-11 if I'm not mistaken, and then they went 7-9, and now they're 8-8. So they're slowly climbing the mountain. They beat Kansas City Chiefs, but they didn't really do much after that. Cleveland, I think didn't quite round into the team that we knew at the end of the year. And yeah, so that's a solid win. That's a solid win though, actually, for Las Vegas, given the fact that the Browns made the playoffs. Is Derek Carr still the guy for John Gruden? Who knows? Marcus Mariota looked pretty good one game for them when Derek Carr went down against the Chargers. But so it'll be interesting to see because I think I personally believe Derek Carr is sort of similar to Baker Mayfield right now. I think Derek Carr is one of those quarterbacks that needs the run to be featured heavily because he seems to be more comfortable when he's throwing out a play action, and guys are open because of the run, and that seems to be the method that seems to be the formula for winning, and that proved to be the case this year. Um, Perhaps the Raiders should look to make moves at the receiving core, and then on defense. But other than that, they got a ways to go. Still, the next team was the Los Angeles Chargers. They drafted Justin Herbert out of Oregon in the draft last year. Um, they looked they were a fun team to watch this year, but they were also disappointing because they were kind of like, because the Chargers were kind of like the Falcons this year. They would build a big lead because Justin Herbert was on fire, and then they'd lose the lead. You know, um, do I think they made the right choice hiring a defensive-minded head coach to be the head coach for the Chargers? I don't know. Sometimes I think if you're going, I think when you when you draft a quarterback, I think when you draft a quarterback and you switch and you decide to go with a different coach, I think you should try and hook that quarterback up with a head coach who's got an offensive background, because you know because you know because that's only if you're going to go with a different head coach though. Seattle Seahawks, obviously Pete Carroll's more of a defensive minded coach, but they didn't. But when they took Russell Wilson, they didn't. They thought he was just going to play backup. They were going to run the ball. With Marshawn Lynch, because they had a really good running game, they had defense, and Russell Wilson kind of just fell into their lap, kind of, and they had a good enough offense to carry them, and a really good defense. The Chargers have a really good defense. They do, but they obviously. But their defense kind of let them down this year. Because if they could have gotten a few stops, because the Chargers had a potential. Because the Chargers really, they should have beaten the Chiefs. They should have beaten the Buccaneers, although it's Tom Brady. They should have beaten the New Orleans Saints if they could have made stops at any point in the ball game. They would have been, and they beat the Chiefs. If they could have had any defense, they could have been maybe been a fringe wild card team. Justin Herbert obviously played way above expectations this year. One of the greatest rookie seasons ever. The first rookie quarterback to have as many 300-yard passing games in his rookie year than anyone else. I think that's the stat. Let's see here. Justin Herbert rookie record. He broke almost every conceivable NFL rookie passing record during this season, including most passing yards, which he threw for 4,336 yards, most passing touchdowns for a rookie, 31, and most completions, 396. That's pretty good. I think I could see why they did go with a defensive guy, because maybe he could help keep the defense, improve the defense, because he might understand it better. And I don't know if the new guy has any I don't know if the new guy has any sort of offensive experience, coaching on the offensive side of the ball, but it remains to be seen. Will they improve next year? Potentially, if they make the right moves. I think they should I think they should really look at the defense and see and really try and fill in those holes because I actually no I think the Chargers have a really good potential to be really good next year. They do. It's just that they gotta look. It's just this they gotta they just gotta learn how to win right now, and that's the Chargers. Um, the Denver Broncos were a bad team this year. They're they were better. They were they won 5 games this year. They went 5-11 this year. Um, Drew Lock, I don't know. I didn't watch much Broncos games this year because I didn't think the Broncos were really worth watching. Um, you know they made some moves this year, but I think it's time for the Broncos to rebuild the defense. You know, Von Miller's getting up there in age. You know, this is Von Miller right now is in his 10th year. I think it's time for them to reshuffle there. Not you don't get rid of him, but there's a lot of holes there, and and obviously um, and obviously John Elway stepped down this year. Um, the one area that he's been struggling to do, that he has struggled with, is finding a good. The one area he struggled with is finding a good quarterback. You know, that's the one area he's been really bad at, is drafting the quarterback. Um, did Drew Lock show some signs of life this year? Yes. Is he the answer? Probably not. But right now he appears to be the best option for them. I th- I don't know what I don't know what their draft will look like, or the kind of picks that they have. So I don't know if they'll have a high enough pick to take a quarterback out of the in the first round, or there. Um, so it remains to be seen. The next division we have the next division that we have to talk about is the AFC North. The teams in the AFC North are the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Pittsburgh Steelers started out really hot, and then their defense started getting injured, and then you saw and then the holes started to show themselves for the first time. You know, they they started out red hot by going 11-0, but there were some wins in there in that stretch that you said, huh, how did they win that? You know, and they were a fraudulent team, and people were like, no, they're not fraudulent, but then they started losing. You know, they lost their first game. They lost their first game to the Washington football team. You know, you know they the one weakness that they had this year was they didn't run the ball. They had no running game to speak of, and Big Ben, as good as he is, he's not the quarterback he used to be. And there were times when I watched him throw, and it looked like just to throw the ball downfield, he had to put, it took everything he got. And and they just brought in just Dwayne Haskins, so maybe they're gonna try and groom him to replace Big Ben, but they were basically the same team we've we've come to expect from them. I feel bad for urinating Tree. He's a big Steelers fan, and he got so excited this year because they were 11-0, and he's like the year of he was like, no more Days of Our Steelers episodes. We're going to the Super Bowl this year, and then the wheels started to fall off, and the same team that we all know came back. They start talking, and Juju Smith-Schuster starts dancing on the logos, and it makes the other team angry, and they lose. And there's just a lot of it's just unfortunate. Do I think I personally believe it's time for a change in the head coach, because obviously they have a good team each year, but Mike Tomlin doesn't appear to be good at dealing with the team ego very well. If I was a coach, I would advise. I don't know how I'd feel about them. How I'd feel about my receiver dancing on other teams' logos and then losing. I don't know how I'd feel about that. I would too many. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that makes too many excuses. They play down to the teams that they should. They always play down to the teams that they should beat handily, and they did do that this year. They're like early in the year they showed they were a team that didn't do that. That didn't play down to competition, but at the end of the year they did, and it eventually hurt them in the playoffs. When they lost to the Browns. The Baltimore Ravens went 11-5 this year. Lamar Jackson. I would say both the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Ravens were fraudulent teams this year. Obviously, Baltimore Ravens last year were 14-2. Lamar Jackson was lighting the league on fire last year, and this year they tried to do the same thing this year, except they didn't pass it. They didn't use weapons, and you can't beat a team in the league anymore by just running it. Shannon Sharp said one time said on the show that the Miami Dolphins are really the only team that could say that they ran their way to a Super Bowl, and that was back in 1972. But since they invented the forward pass, you're not going to do that very often anymore. I think the Ravens. I think the Ravens, are still a good team, but Lamar Jackson I think they should try and find a coach that knows how to develop Lamar Jackson or coach him, because I do agree with them. They do need to find some sort of passing game to complement his running abilities. One of the opinions that Shannon Sharp seems to have is that one of the things that Shannon Sharp said one time was that it's a possibility that Lamar Jackson's becoming just like Michael Vick, because when Michael Vick was in Atlanta, they expected him to put on a show because he was running quarterback, and they wanted to make plays, and he fell into that trap, and his career was kind of cut short a little bit because it was only until the latter part of his career where Michael Vick tried to become more of a pocket passer. He tried to incorporate more of a passing game into his strategy. He learned how to read coverages, set his feet, and only run when he needs to. And I think that's what Lamar Jackson needs to do, because he needs to preserve himself. He's the quarterback. He's the starting quarterback, and if he gets injured, he doesn't do wonders for his team, and he turns the ball over, in the big games. So I think if Lamar Jackson learns how to if Lamar Jackson can learn how to be in the pocket and only runs when he needs to, you know, keep the keep the defense on their heels a little bit. I think that's the key. But right now, Lamar Jackson can't do that right now, and until they can, I don't see them being a Super Bowl contender. They'll make the playoffs. They'll make the playoffs probably, but they won't be a Super Bowl team until Lamar Jackson can prove that he can beat it, that he can pass the ball efficiently enough. The Browns were a surprise team this year too. It was kind of funny because you had the Browns in the AFC, and then you also had the Chicago Bears in the NFC at the beginning of the season, and both teams started out with a let's see, they started out with a 4-1 record. The Browns were quiet 4-1. They started before they hit their bye. They were 5-3. They were a quiet 5-3, and no one was talking about them, because they were like, they still have some holes, but they were 5-3. The Bears were also kind of like that at the beginning of the year, because the Bears started out, 5-1, right? And they went into their bye 5-5, but they started out pretty hot as well. It's just that the Cleveland Browns, I suppose, unlike the Bears, they stuck with it. They kept winning, and they had some growing pains to do, especially against the Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers early in the season, because they got drilled 38-6 game 1 versus the Baltimore Ravens, and then 38-7 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But they eventually rounded into shape. They're not the Browns of old anymore. But who knows? We'll see though, because we say that now, but we'll see. But I think they found a really good head coach in Kevin Stefanski. He seems to have brought the right kind of offense for Baker Mayfield to succeed in. It's more of a run-heavy type of system that features the play action more and works out of that. And I think Odell Beckham's injury was kind of a blessing in disguise, because it taught Baker Mayfield how to spread the ball around and be more careful, because I think Baker Mayfield kind of ran to that. Oh, it's Odell Beckham. I gotta force it, and then he turns the ball over, and that's kind of the trap a number one receiver can have. If your quarterback can have is if he has a really good number one, it's the trap is that you fall into the trap of forcing it to him, and then the potential is interception. Like if certain plays, if you throw it to him and he's double covered, could get intercepted. But credit to them, they made the playoffs for the first time since 2003. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. I think it'll be interesting to see as well, because this year they didn't really have fans. We'll have to see what a packed dog pound will do for them next year. Because I think it'll be a loud place next year for the Browns, and good for them, because it was kind of weird to say. It's kind of weird to see the Browns 11-5, at least for me, because I haven't known the Browns winning. We've only known them for being bad, and I root for the Browns to succeed because it's the Browns, and they deserve it. And I would say that they deserve it more than any team, because unlike the Jets or the Lions, they've actually tried to win. I think, the Lions too often the Lion the sure the Cleveland Browns were a mess because they kept firing coaches, but this time they found the guy and stuck with it, you know. But the Cleveland Browns deserve it. Um, hopefully they're good for the next couple of years. I like what they got going on. The next team in the last team in the division was the Cincinnati Bengals. They were pretty fun to watch this year. You know, until Joe Burrow went down. You know, they were in a lot of their games this year. Until Joe Burrow went down with an ACL. The thing with the Bengals is they're a young team as well. I think it'll be interesting. It's unfortunate that Joe Burrow had to go down with an ACL, and I think this next draft they'll probably try and look to build the lineup, build up the O line a little bit. I think that's the strategy that they'll take this year, because Joe Burrow was running around a little bit too much this year. You know, like he'd drop back and he'd pass it, and I know that feeling because when I was because my varsity year of high school, I wasn't the starter, but our O line was horrible, and our quarterback would drop back to pass or hand the ball off, and they'd get drilled, you know, because they didn't have any time to set to throw it and read the defense. You know, it was not fun, and we lost a lot of games, and that's kind of what happened to the Bengals this year. They obviously have a lot of work to do on the defensive side. They got some pieces, but obviously it's still a process, still a work in progress. We'll have to see how Joe Burrow recovers, and what kind of moves they make to try and protect him. The next division in the last division in the AFC is the AFC South. The teams in that division are the Tennessee Titans, who won the division at 11-5. The Indianapolis Colts, who finished second in the AFC South with an 11-5 record. The Houston Texans finished third with a 4-12 record, and then the Jacksonville Jaguars win the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes by going 1-15 to finish last in the division and last in the NFL. The Tennessee Titans seem to have found a method of have seemed to have found a formula for success. You know, they've always been you know, the thing with the Titans is that I think they've had this all along, because for the last couple of years this has been their method. It's just that their quarterbacks, the play they got out of the quarterback wasn't the best, and I think Mike Vrabel, their head coach, is a really good hire, because I think he brought a lot of that toughness with him from New England to the Titans, and you saw it a couple games in 2018 when Mariota was still the quarterback. You saw games where Derrick Henry had a really good game, but they weren't quite there yet. You know, they struggled. They still struggled, and it's kind of cool to see a team like an old school kind of team. You know, like an old school kind of team have success. You know, I think the receivers are okay. It's just they need a couple receivers. I don't think their receiving core is too good yet, and I think Ryan Tannehill is a pretty good quarterback, except that I think a large part of that is due to Derrick Henry. We'll see. they were pretty good this year. You know, they just have they have they just ha- it just so happened that they ran into, you know, the Baltimore Ravens at the end of the year, who was red hot. Um, you know, they played well this year. You know, they you know, really the one game all regular season that they didn't play too particularly well was two games was against the Indianapolis Colts and the Green Bay Packers. Those were really the only Those were really the only times that they didn't play too particularly well. But the other times they played really well. Um, what I th- what will they look like next year? Who knows? I still think, as I said before, I think they need to find a receiver. I think they should try and find a number one, because I think right now I think they've got a lot of one and twos right now. I think they've got a lot of twos right now, and I think that's hindering them a little bit. Um, but we'll see. The next team in that division was the Indianapolis Colts. They had Philip Rivers quarterbacking them this year. They were a solid team. They were average, I would say. You know, their defense was kind of lackluster in places, but they won nevertheless. Um, you know, they looked dominant. They looked dominant one week and the next week, but then they looked not so. But then they didn't look so great the next game, and 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 I think they're and I think and it'll and I think they've got the pieces to succeed, especially on defense and on offense. It's just, I think a younger quarterback I think a quarterback that's younger and will play longer will prove better, prove will pay off. It looks like they're gonna try and sign Matthew Stafford or trade for Matthew Stafford with the Lions, and maybe that's the spark that they need. But I think the Colts are I think the Colts were an average team this year, even though they went 11-5 this year. They played okay in spots, as I said before, but there were spots where they didn't. As I said before, there were spots where they looked dominant, like a potential Super Bowl team, and then there were times when they didn't. So we'll see. We'll see about next year. The next team in the division is the Houston Texans, and boy, were they dumb this year. I don't. I am so glad that the Texans fired Bill O'Brien when they did, but I think it was a year too late though, because because that DeAndre Hopkins trade was not a great trade. It was not a good trade, because I don't care who you are or what kind of ego he has. DeAndre Hopkins is one of the best receivers in the league, hands down. And you gave and he showed you why he's the top receiver, because you know he was a really good addition for the Arizona Cardinals. He was he was a key piece for the Arizona offense this year. And as much as I like, and as much and who they get back, who they trade for, they got David Johnson. I don't care who you are. I'm not trading my best receiver for a running back, never. You know, and I think I think their record, this year was indicative of the move, because they were horrible. You know, and I feel bad for Deshaun Watson because he's and I feel bad for Deshaun Watson because last year they made it all the way to the divisional round, right? What because they played the let's see, Houston Texans 2019. The Texans were, let's see here. Last year, the Texans went 10-6 last year. They were a wild card team. And who did they beat in the playoffs? Because they played someone. No. They got bounced last year by the Texans. No, they didn't. Hold up. Who did the Chiefs beat all of last year? Hold up. Hold up. Let's put that on there right there. Okay. Because they beat. Yeah, they beat the Texans in the divisional round. But anyway, they beat the Texans last year, and I can't think of who the Texans beat in the first round last year. But the Texans deserved it, I thought. I feel bad for Deshaun Watson because it's like finally starting to have success, and then Bill O'Brien trades your best receiver, and you lose a valuable weapon for Deshaun Watson, because as good as Will Fuller is and Brandon Cooks are, they're not DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm a Beaver fan. I love Brandon Cooks, but he's not DeAndre Hopkins, and you lose and he was a valuable piece, and players, and it didn't look like the players were too happy about that move, because Deshaun Watson was still running around because they don't have an offensive lineman. They don't have an O-line, so Deshaun Watson was getting sacked, and they weren't winning anything. You know, the only weapon that they had, you know, the saving grace for Deshaun Watson was always DeAndre Hopkins, because he was the one person he could go to that was consistent. And it's just unfortunate for the Texans, and I feel bad for the fan base. I feel bad for Deshaun Watson, and if I was him, I would want out too, because Bill O'Brien did more to hurt the team, and I would say my trust in the management is not very high either. So I would want out of Texas. I would want out of Houston as well. The next team in that division is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They win the sweepstakes for Trevor Lawrence. They went 1-15, and I think it's too bad for Gardner Minshew because last year he was kind of the wow kid. You know, he came in for Nick Foles, and it's like, wow, look at him. Who knew? A kid from Washington State. You know, look at him. He's a winner. And this year was like, wow. No, not really. But maybe that's just Jacksonville being bad. But they started losing, and I think that was one of the reasons why. I don't think it was necessarily um, Gardner Minshew's fault. But they do have some pieces. They have the most cap space this year of any team. So they're gonna look for them to load up. So look for them to really load up this year. You know, I think they got a good receiver in DJ Chark. As a Beaver fan, I would love to see them keep Jake Luton on as their quarterback, or as a second stringer. But I think I think Urban Meyer is going to be a good fit for them. I think they just got in their own way because they lost all that talent on defense, and bad management, and led to player revolts, and they didn't really have much after Jalen Ramsey left, and Saxonville was no more. So it's unfortunate. Congratulations to them for winning the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, though. It'll be interesting to see how they do, because they now got Urban Meyer. They convinced Urban Meyer to come out of retirement again, and we'll have to see. He's got a lot of expectations as a quarterback coming into the league, but so we'll see how he handles it. I think he's up for it, but he's got to stay healthy as always. I would say the key factor for Urban Meyer this year will be the kind of O-line he has and the weapons he has. I would say draft Trevor Lawrence first, obviously, and then use your other picks and draft and hope that Penei Sewell doesn't get taken before you get to your next pick, because I think there are some good linemen in the draft this year. Penei Sewell out of Oregon is expected to be the best lineman ever, or the best O-line in a while in the draft. So I think that's the move that they should make, because if they don't address the O-line this year, then they'll have no shot, because Trevor Lawrence is going to get hit a lot, and I think that's kind of the thing. Perhaps you bring in a veteran. Perhaps Urban Meyer brings in a veteran until they can get the O-line fixed, because I don't want Trevor Lawrence to, depending on the development of the O-line, I don't want my quarterback running around very much or out there, or my young quarterback, the future of my franchise. I don't want him out there until the O-line is addressed, and that's the thing that I think that could be a move. There's highly likely that they'll play him week 1 anyway, but I think the O-line just needs to be worked on and allowed to round into shape, because Trevor Lawrence can't play if he's injured, or if it's not to your benefit if he gets injured, because you don't have a good enough O-line to protect him. So offensive side first, and then defense. I think this is one of those situations where the Jaguars should look for offense first before their defense. Because it'll be important to surround Trevor Lawrence with weapons. And the next. So now that's the AFC. That was the AFC right there. Next, we're going to talk about the NFC. And before I get ahead of myself, once again, you are watching the Hess Sports Podcast on Diego Warrior on twitch.tv/Diego Warrior 100. Recently, I've been experiencing some frame drops. So I'm not multi-streaming to my YouTube channel this time. I will be uploading this to my YouTube channel though, right after this. But if you like it on the YouTube channel, consider leaving a like and subscribing and sharing